Yeah.
So we have discussed the drugging in great depth. And I want to first bring up that it was this person who actually wanted to do this interview. So the natural human reaction, whether or not someone is accused of being mentally ill or otherwise, even, according to this person who studies psychology in college, is to want to discuss this more and to want to keep discussing it. I mean, honestly, how much do you want to discuss this with me? I mean, how
I just
often?
think it's an area that's how often?
Yes.
Well, it needs to be discussed regularly because it impacts your life every day.
Exactly. But these people make the completely ridiculous argument that I'm fixated or preoccupied and that I'm making videos instead of doing something else, as if they know what's best for me, as if they know how I should pursue happiness, as if they know anything about me, much less what I should be doing with my life. They will also make the ridiculous argument that I have, delusions of grandeur, that I believe that I'm the top martial artist and that I'm not, even though I have over 12 other people saying that I am the top martial artist. You see how ridiculous that is?
No, definitely. I mean, the kind of they have no idea on what you go through on a daily basis. I mean, they've probably heard of PTSD, and I don't even think that actually describes what you go through on a daily basis. And that's quite significant because that's associated with, people who've experienced, trauma during war, etc. And you're going through worse than that, having you for over 6 weeks. And during my observations, I've just noticed that it's been extremely insightful. It's very difficult to actually say anything to you that would be supportive because it's just constantly happening, changing. There's that, right, okay, let's give them a break. It's not going to happen today. Oh no, it's happening every day. You're being fumed, you're being drugged, whether it's in your room, whether it's in your car, whether it's going to a local shop, having to go to 30 different places, even more, just to get a sandwich or a drink, a basic drink. It's okay for other people to say, oh, well, he's got, issues and he's kind of over dramatizing his skills. But no, I've seen your videos and you'd have to be observing a lot of your videos because sometimes what people can get caught up in is just watching one clip and thinking, oh no, this isn't giving him, what's this guy talking about? But going through all your videos, you can actually start seeing everything you're talking about. But you'd have to be a very observant person. If you go in with a negative attitude and you already have an opinion before you actually observe the videos, that in itself isn't a fair judgment.
Well, yes, this reminds me of this one viewer I have named Kite. He did the interview. He also is on record saying I'm the top martial artist, and he was watching my videos for a while. He knew from the start that I was being harassed by a group. He first came across me in the comments on a news video, and he noticed that there was tons of people targeting me. And I believe he saw me on another news video, and he noticed the same thing. Then he checked out my channel. He watched some of my videos. He's like, yeah, they are definitely, group harassing you, group stalking you, and there's, and then he believed me very quickly. Also,
Yeah, I've noticed it myself, and it may be tactful for them to do it, but this is ridiculous just to suppress or demoralize somebody for their own personal humor or whatever, for their own personal gain, because that's what it is. They're trying to gain from what you consider and what your witnesses have seen, to be something that is honourable and respectable. And they need to understand, the traditions of sparring and understand that you hold a lot of respect for it, and you've shown your audience, what this is about. I mean, since I've known you, what was it, 6 weeks, I didn't really know that much about sparring. But now I know so much, and that's all because of watching your videos and, talking to you. So, it's extremely educational. You're very informative. So any person who's trying to discredit you or dishonor you, they're just absolute fools.
yes, it's interesting because even Master He El Cho, he wrote a book called the complete 1 and 3 step sparring, and the book talks about over 50 different techniques, as well as 20 different self-defense techniques against weapons. So it shows the transferable skills. It's right there in the book about sparring, and it shows you where it overlaps with the weapons, and that is obviously different from sports fighting. Also, I want to briefly touch on the Zimbardo experiment, the Stanford prison experiment. You're probably not aware of it, but I'm just going to give you the general idea. Basically, there was these people who knowingly signed a consent form to be experimented on, and it required them being in a kind of psych ward-like setting. And before the experiment was over, they wanted out, and the people running the experiment did not let them out. And there was huge protests at Stanford outside of the experiment. So this establishes that non-consensual experimentation is wrong, as we know, but especially that even consensual experimentation is wrong if the person wants out. That has been established in American history. This is a famous experiment. Okay, now, if I don't know for sure about this, I have no idea, but I know I signed things in the psych ward, and that also makes it very apparent that whatever state of mind I was in, it was certainly not one that you should be able to, hold over my head, especially after years of me protesting. Is it fair to say that the cops, all these people should be imprisoned, and the police and the FBI and the mental health people, they should all lose their jobs? Because even if I sign this, it shows a lack of basic medical ethics, basic morality. I mean, this is not advanced philosophy here. This is common sense. Little kids know it's wrong. Little kids know that this is wrong. So is it...
Well, in my opinion, I mean, obviously they wouldn't lose their jobs, but in my opinion that authorities or professionals aside need to be questioned about their understanding on your abilities and your cognitive abilities, and consider that you're functioning in a very suppressed state and still doing a better job than a normal person, what they consider to be a normal person. I mean, you seem to hold superpowers. I mean, what I've seen you go through on a daily basis, I don't think many people could do, and you still consistently keep up a routine, a regime, and it proves their point that they need to actually go back to their drawing board and actually reevaluate what they know about you, because it clearly, what we've seen on your videos, and now I've known you, 13 other witnesses know that, you've proven beyond any shadow of a doubt that you can do things far more superiorly than, an average person. Right. So I can understand your point of view completely, and I agree.
So is it fair to say, and listen carefully, and of course be honest as you always are told to be, is it fair to say that this is an example of inferior minds that lack basic morality, using psychiatry and the system against a superior mind with a higher sense of morality?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a taboo issue going on within the psychiatry where they do not want to be considered as, professionals who are discredited in any shape or form. And they believe that their actions have, they don't want to, what's the word, be proactive. If they've made a wrong judgment on someone, they're less likely to admit it. This is the struggle many patients, many individuals have had, is that they're in denial of what they've actually diagnosed the person to be. And it kind of sets this very difficult stage for a person who doesn't have a psychiatric disorder to prove a point. And it's if you look throughout history, it's in psychiatry in particular, and geneticists as well. I feel that they're both very similar. They tend not to want to be considered wrong or proven to be wrong, and they'll go beyond any expectation to prove that they definitely don't want to be discredited. So in your case, it does appear to be the case that they, just like you said, I completely agree with what you're saying. I mean, it's just so confusing, and it just doesn't make any sense. You know, even if, have you considered a second opinion? Has there been a second opinion or anything like that?
Well, I've had conflicting opinions from psychiatrists, and when I was younger, the person said he believed my problem was behavioral, and my parents insisted on something else. So they kept basically going to psychiatrists till they got ones that agreed with them, and then the most unscrupulous psychiatrists continued to agree with them. Now, I would say this is a classic case of we investigated ourselves and we found that we did nothing wrong, whether it is the cops or mental health or their allies elsewhere investigating their friends and saying, oh, my friends in the Santa Clara County Sheriff Department, they did nothing wrong. It's a classic case of we investigated ourselves and we found we did nothing wrong.
No, completely. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking.
I mean, and you have you have a psychiatrist himself writing the book, The CIA Doctors. For them to expect me to subject myself to psychiatric abuse willingly is absolutely insane. That is madness. That is the very definition of madness. When a sick, complex-having oppressor expects a righteous man with nothing wrong with him at all to subject himself to psychiatric abuse. That is madness. But they've went one step further, and they've covertly drugged him instead of admitting their own shortcomings, insufficiencies, and lack of basic morality.
But, that's actually criminal, to be honest. Forcing unwilling, even if you're willing to participate, at some point there should, a person should be, with their human rights, they should be allowed to say, okay, I do not want to be a participant of this. And they should be given the benefit of the doubt. There should be that, maneuvering space for them. It just seems like, no, you've agreed to this, now you have to, that's it. There's no yes or no beyond that. You have to just follow what we say. We're the gods. You have to follow what we say. Whether it's right or wrong, regardless if it's right or wrong, you're just put into this experiment as a guinea pig.
Exactly.
And it's just ridiculous to subject somebody against their own will, forced upon. And then what makes it worse is that, okay, you've got the authorities, you've got professionals on one side, and then you've got the trolls and the fumes and the drugs and the gang stalkers on the other. So it's kind of like, where does a person go? Because you've got no escape. It just seems like they're everywhere. Everybody's in on it. Everybody, and nobody wants to see it from your point of view. They just say, no, this is a man who just continually makes these videos that are senseless or whatever, and discredit you, dishonor you. Don't want to really look at the bigger picture here. What's actually going on? Why is this person actually taking the time out to make these videos and actually showing people, what his suffering is?
Well, let's make something clear right now.
Idiot.
Let's make something clear right now. They're attempting to discredit me. They're attempting to dishonor me.
Yeah.
Those words are very subjective, but you have to look at it in its pure form. In its pure form, have they dishonored me? Absolutely not. In its pure form, have they discredited me? Absolutely not. They have dishonored themselves. They have discredited themselves. Now, I have two things I want to say, then I want to wrap this up because we're almost at 15 minutes. Number one, I want to be on record again, and you're my witness. And they're almost certainly listening to this because they're following me and watching me all day. I have no recollection, so help me God, of signing any consent form. And if I did, it was in the psych ward and I was either drugged or drugged. Anyway, I have no intention of participating willingly. I never have. I want out if you think I have. Number two, I can tell that you're upset by the way you say things. Can you imagine how I feel? They took the law into their own hands to do this to me, and that demands a more harsh and opposite reaction.
No, I just don't. I'm lost for words, to be honest.
All right,
Because
we're out of time. So what do you want to say?
no, I was just going to say that given that you've explained that it's a subjective opinion of mine, which is true, but honestly, looking at it from a bigger picture and looking at it on a daily basis, it's disturbing. From one person to another, I mean, you're the victim, and we've said that they're trying to do this, they're subjecting you to these, indirectly, or it may not be obvious to a person, or they're not seeing it happen, and that's not exactly, it's covertly happening.
Oh, we forgot to bring up though in the first clip was the MK Ultra. Okay, we have to thoroughly establish right now that this stuff is historically happens. For them people not to give me the benefit of the doubt without any proof makes them an idiot, because this was the center of MK Ultra. The Psychological Operations Unit, Army Presidio Base, San Francisco. Operation Midnight Climax, San Francisco. George White, San Francisco. He was one of the main MK Ultra guys. And he was close friends with Sidney Gottlieb, the chemist in charge of MK Ultra.
That's right.
So, briefly, around halfway through the documentary, I told you to notice the behavior of the black guy who was covertly drugged during the MK Ultra experiment. Can you describe his behavior?
Well, it was extremely emotional. I know that he was suffering from PTSD.
Yes.
I know that he was subjected to, he was demoralized as a soldier because he was working for the army. He was obviously removed from his post. He tried 2 marriages. They failed.
No, the black guy, he was working for the army. I don't remember. Maybe he was. Okay, go ahead.
And because before he was discharged in his position, they actually had they didn't say he had psychosis or he had depression. They said he was kind of sound of mind. But once they had done these experiments on him for 16 plus years, and he wasn't cooperating, that's when they started to sort of become very negative towards him. They started to say he displayed psychosis, depression. And this is kind of, it goes, completely to the opposite side of what they actually initially said when he was working for them. So, yeah, going back to the things that he was experiencing afterwards, he was talking about the pain that he felt, that he had millions of needles in his body, the psychological damage that it caused him. He couldn't sustain relationships. He tried 2 marriages, they failed. He couldn't go out. He was socially, most in his own home. Physically, he had kind of this inability to function on a normal, mentally and physically. So overall, it affected him in every possible way. I mean, I don't even think this person got any kind of compensation.
This is the guy who was crying, right?
Yeah, he was emotional. Yeah, he was an emotional wreck, and it was to talk about it. I mean, it was just so devastating to watch.
So ladies and gentlemen, this guy was a guy, I remember him being in the military, but I guess he was in the military, and he was obviously a kind of tougher black guy, at least at some point in his life, and they had made him an emotional wreck. They had made him emotionally unstable, which is kind of characteristic of mental illness, and they try to say it's biological. These were environmental factors, especially chemical factors, that made him this way, okay? And then he's ripe for, victimization by psychiatry, further victimization, as they misdiagnose him as having some kind of mental illness when it is really an emotional state induced by the same psychiatric community that would then seek to treat him. How disturbing is that?
The irony is that although there was nothing wrong with him, they drugged him, they were testing the drugs on him. And this was unwillingly. I mean, I don't think because he didn't participate, he wasn't responding. The research wasn't reflecting on what they wanted. He was always resisting. So therefore, they had to get him out of the experiment and actually sort of impose, a mental health illness upon him, because they didn't want this information to be released. So they had to discredit him in some form or another. So it turned out to be, a too evil kind of situation, because he wasn't cooperating with them. So therefore, he was rejected and then defined as somebody who had psychosis and depression. When in actual fact, he didn't have that. What he did have was like PTSD symptoms as a result of their testing and their cruelty.
Yes.
And it's like he then ended up, eventually did have, these kind of mental health, illnesses or whatever, because as a result of their testing.
Oh, yeah, so, environmental factors. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's just like, they kind of made him into that forcibly.
Oh, yeah.
Into something that they were trying to prove that was going to help him. It was just, it didn't make any sense. Human guinea pigs, lab rats, that's all these people, psychiatrists use people as, individuals who are subjected to taking psychiatric drugs that, most of the time they don't even know what's in the drugs. I mean, that was another thing that was coming out of that documentary. They had no idea, the psychiatrists had no idea what were in the drugs, what they were actually giving their patients. And that still remains to this day.
Now, these people, remember, there were so many people involved in MK Ultra. Okay, their MO is to use a huge group of people. Remember, George White had connections in the criminal underworld. Before he was recruited for the second time by the mind control crowd in the military, he was working as the head of the narcotics division of the DEA or something, right? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay, so this guy, he had a vast network of informants, snitches, sniveling, watered-down gangsters, and what have you, pimps, prostitutes, you name it, right? And he recruited from the criminal underworld. Okay, this is a guy who, on record, according to the ABC 1979 documentary, pulled out a gun in the middle of a restaurant and put it in a waiter's face. These people have no respect for the law. In that documentary, they say that all of them knew they were doing the wrong thing, but they did it anyway. And after the church committee, the Ford Commission, the Supreme Court, they said that they were stopping, that they have stopped. They admitted that they were wrong. They said they have stopped, but they continued to do it. And even in the documentary at the end, they say, did MK Ultra really stop? And of course, it didn't. So when you look at this...
No, it didn't. It continued. And the experiments still continue, but obviously more covertly. I mean, obviously they've learned from their mistakes.
Yep.
What people discovered, 22 years later, they've learned from their mistakes. They know how to cover their tracks. They know where the loopholes are. So, they've got all the the dots and the T's covered, the crosses covered. So it's kind of, to me, it just doesn't make any sense why somebody couldn't understand what predicament you're in. Given that you were in the psych ward, if they did or didn't get you to sign something, you need to be given that information. You have
absolutely,
a right.
Absolutely. Yeah, where's my copy? Where's my copy of this stuff? I was never given a copy. You would think if there's one copy of a contract that you would want to have a copy of, that you're required by law to have a copy of, it would be a consent form to something like that, right? My goodness. Also, I want to bring up briefly, I've reported there's Jews and whites involved. Sidney Gottlieb was of Jewish descent. And George White, guess what his race was? I'll give you a hint. His surname. Anyway, he was.
That's a bit of a no-brainer, but carry on.
So I want the viewers to really think. If you were in my shoes, how would you feel? What would you want to do to these people? Especially when you get angry and they take you back to the psych ward for yelling in my room. I'm not like grabbing a cop by the neck and yelling in his face. I'm not out threatening people, which would be understandable. I'm in my room yelling, and then they take me back to the psych ward after they covertly drug me. Those unscrupulous pigs and those godless shrinks. But go ahead.
I was just going to say that, you're not allowed to behave in any shape or form in your own environment, and that's concerning because everybody can do what they want in their own environment. As long as you're not harming anyone, you're in your own space, it's your own time, you have a right to live. It seems like they want to control every part of your life.
Yes, and I have no history of violence. I'm in my mid-30s. I have no history of violence. I mean, come on. I'm a black man in California in his mid-30s with no history of violence. You know how many people have a history of violence in this country, in this state alone?
And not to mention, you're very, strong, you're very fit, and you're very powerful. So I don't understand, if it was somebody else who was going through, subjected to what you're subjected to, I think their reaction would be of violence and retaliation. But you've actually turned it around in your defense, and you're showing people that, you're stronger than this, you're above all this, and you do it in a civilized way.
And so any final thoughts? This whole interview right now is at like 36 minutes or something. Or excuse me, 26 minutes, which is a long time. The interview we had before, I still have a clip from the one before, which would make it a total of an hour and a half, But anyway, so any final thoughts? Let's wrap this up.
No, I just think that you need to be given, people need to ease off you, and they need to look at things from your perspective. And yeah, I just think it's just ridiculous.
Also, one last thing. At the end where George White said, "It was fun, fun, fun." Where else could a red-blooded American lie, cheat, steal, rape, and pillage, something, paraphrasing, with the approval of the Most Highest? Any thoughts about how disturbing that is for the regular American, much less someone who's a victim of it right now?
But for me, because he's a psychiatrist, and most psychiatrists, I mean, you've got good and bad.
Oh no! George White, he wasn't a psychiatrist. Sidney Gottlieb, he goes like this. Gottlieb was the chemist in charge. Donald Ewan Cameron was the head of the World Psychiatric Association, Canadian Psychiatric Association, American Psychiatric Association, some others, and he was the main psychiatrist, and George White was like the criminal military guy. Go ahead.
But yeah, so basically, it's almost like it was an experiment that human lives didn't matter. Wrongs and rights didn't matter either, as long as they could just keep testing. And it didn't. That's it, really. It's just a matter of not wanting to recognise, that they had failed, and that it cost human lives.
Also, I want everyone to look at the comments. I'll try to put it there. The history of unethical experimentation in America, or the history of non-consensual experimentation. Find a valid source, okay? These people have done horrible things like you would not believe, and it's always vulnerable individuals. Feeding, retarded kids radioactive cereal, okay? Babies, experiments on babies. Just absolute evil, okay? America... No politician talks about these things. This one, remember you sent me that clip that I saw before. It was that lady speaking in the 90s to President Clinton, I believe, about her experiences with MKUltra and other non-consensual experimentations that were going on, and she was trying to connect it. I'm talking about the lady with the short hair and the glasses and the other lady.
Right. Yeah.
It's like...
child abuse was being carried out.
Yes.
Brain control, mind control, and the reasoning behind that was that they wanted to know whether you could condition people to extract information from others. That was the whole purpose of this experiment. Even the documentary we witnessed yesterday, that was also about, extracting information.
We're almost out of time. Let me just cover this briefly. Remember, they said they wanted to control behavior even when it's against their own natural desire for self-preservation. Remember that?
Yeah.
But yeah, we're about out of time.